Witnesses ran for cover as gunshots rang out on one of the busiest streets in Sydney's inner west.
There were several gunshots and then I saw a man run out, jump into a car.
It is very brazen, and that's why we believe it's obviously a targeted attack.
Are either of them known to police?
Both are known to police.
Two brothers with bikie links, wounded but alive, are the latest casualties in a conflict marked by public shootings, incinerated getaway vehicles, and in just over 2 years, 18 bodies.
I think police thought they had a lid on it. They had slowed down a major conflict between the Alameddines and the Hamsies. But now, in the last couple of months, there seems to be a new conflict, and it could be internal in the Comanchero. The death of Alan Meridian is a big hit.
Alan Meridian's last ride marked the early and predictable demise of a flashy Sydney gangster. His Comanchero connections could not protect him.
He had been for the last, since at least August, aware that he was going to be killed, that there was a hit on him. He was moving around. He'd moved out of the family home, which was outside of Sydney, to protect his family. He'd been switching cars.
Sydney is reeling from another gangland execution. Alan Meridian was shot dead in the front seat of his car at Bondi Junction this morning.
His killers tracked him to the basement car park of his eastern suburbs bolt hole.
They knew the vehicle, they knew the location. It was 8:15 in the morning. So they've allowed him to enter the driver's seat of a motor vehicle, be confined to that space, and they've shot him at close range through the window, half a dozen times.
There was a fairly strong degree of sophistication around his murder. We know that then post the actual shooting incident, that at least 2 other vehicles were then burnt out. That brings with it some complexities and lots of pre-planning and post-planning.
In the early 2000s, Meridian had been central to a cocaine syndicate nicknamed the Golden Gun.
He had the connections, the overseas connections, and the door into Sydney. And by that I mean he had the ability to open the door for importation of prohibited drugs from both America and Central America.
His excesses, revealed at trial, stood out even in the ostentatious world of cocaine gangsters. In 2007, Ryan Jeffcoates was part of the police team that entered Meridian's Sydney home.
Hand railing, toilet roll holders, knives and forks in the drawer. I remember being gold-plated Versace knives and forks that they were eating dinner off. I remember the lounge room roof was like the Sistine Chapel.
Meridian was jailed for 10 years and still on parole when police warned him last year he had a price on his head.
And I think we have a duty of care and a moral obligation to let people know that they may be at threat.
Meridian's parole conditions wouldn't let him get out of Dodge.
If you don't want to be subject to a parole condition and go overseas, then don't commit a crime in the first place.
Meridian is the latest fatality in a loosely connected set of underworld killings that began in 2020 and bottomed out last August with the execution of 2 friends en route to an engagement party.
2 women on a night out with friends have been murdered on a suburban street.
Lametta Fadlala was a former business partner of Alan Meridian's ex-wife. She had strong gangland connections.
One theory is that it was a target attack because of her past relationships with other known identities.
Tonight, Sydney's gangland war claims another victim.
Last May, Comanchero Omar Zahed was murdered at an Auburn gym. His brother, Tarek, also a Comanchero, was shot but survived.
And I just scared I will get shot.
The getaway car was incinerated. New South Wales police have long had their sights on the Comanchero gang.
They're really an organised crime entity. They're an organised crime business. Their business is drug distribution. Their business is putting misery onto the citizens of this state.
They've linked up with the Alameddine clan. who are very powerful Middle Eastern organised crime family in Sydney's southwest. So the Alameddines and the Comancheros have joined forces, and that is a really scary thing that police have had to confront. And between them, they have caused most of the bloodshed that we've seen in the last 2 years, almost exclusively.
Recent killings have little to do with a faded conflict between the Alameddine and Hamzi crime families.
People have leveraged the so-called dispute between two families for their own purposes.
10 people have been charged with murder so far over the 18 killings. Jason Weinstein says investigators are unravelling the networks responsible.
14 of the 18, we have taken out a number of syndicates and people who facilitated or were party to those murders.
This Gangland stoush is brought to you via CCTV and by TikTok.
Comanchero boss Tariq Zahed is shot at again, but this time it's by the police.
Where a new audience is discovering veteran crime reporter Mark Morrie.
So people are seeing on social media, they're actually seeing people being shot. The cars are on fire everywhere. There's this vision everywhere. Also, these gangsters live on social media, so there's imagery of them everywhere. In the old days, literally, guys would go missing in gangland wars, or they were shot in the back of the head at midnight and buried in a shallow grave. Now it's all been done out in public, so the perception that there's more murders is because of the fact that they're a lot more visible because they're captured on TV.
The head of New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics, Jackie Fitzgerald, says the perception that Sydney is awash with blood doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
In the most recent year, we've had 10 firearm murders in New South Wales, and that's really amongst the lowest we've ever seen, and certainly a big fall from 28 years ago when we were looking at around 36 firearm murders in New South Wales. By any measure, they're very serious crimes, and those crimes are topical. Those crimes are ones that capture the public interest.
Now, I can recall in 2013 there was 314 organised crime or related shooting instances. We've had something around the vicinity of about 50 this year only.
Combined with the ostentatious lifestyles of this crop of criminals, there's some compelling content.
It seems the young people are really attracted to this underworld and all these hits. It's this lure of a glamorous life. You know, it's not too glamorous in Rookwood, I'm telling you now.